guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called The Villainous Family is Against Independence. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! The extraordinary life of our girl starts when a cherished item from her mother breaks, triggering a flood of memories from her past. And after reliving her time as Yunga-u, all she can say is that her current life is destined for disaster. Elodie Perdia, a really pretty lady with pinkish eyes and long blonde hair, is the illegitimate daughter of Duke Perdia and has recently become aware that she has been reborn as a character from a book she had read in a previous life. She wishes she had been born with memories from the beginning, so she would have known that mistreating her maids and spending recklessly isn't the best way to get attention, because this personality will drive her to commit evil deeds and she will end up dying as a villainess. Although her character is a bit nasty, her death has a different direct cause, which involves her father, the novel's greatest villain. Based on what she recalls, Elodie is engaged to the first prince, but their engagement will be terminated due to her many evil deeds. As a villainous family wanting to solidify their power through the prince, the Duke decided to adopt the female lead, Estelle, and have her engaged to him. Elodie intends to leave the family, but running away is not an option because the Duke will undoubtedly catch her at some point. So she decides to think about it carefully and just writes a letter to her fiancé, the handsome first prince. She can already picture herself living with a very gorgeous guy, but staying alive is her top priority, so breaking the engagement is her first move. Oh my, she's not wrong. The prince does look really husband material, but his green eyes tell me he is not the male lead. In any case, the letter arrives and he is startled that Elodie wants to end the engagement and even asks that he sign the documents, which irritates him. After a few days, our lovely girl is summoned by her father, Sylvester Perdia, who, by the way, looks quite young and striking with those curls and golden eyes. He begins by stating that the first prince had contacted him regarding her letter. Although he tries not to interfere with her actions within their family, he finds it difficult to comprehend her desire to end the engagement, given that she was the one who initially insisted on it. This surprises Elodie because she never expected the Duke to disagree with her decision, given that both he and the first prince are displeased with it. But she remains calm and asks if she is not allowed to cancel the engagement, which the Duke confirms. As a penalty, the Duke informs Elodie that she'll be put on probation for the time being, which she accepts casually. A look of fear crosses her face as she exits the office, but she isn't too disappointed because she anticipated this outcome given the Duke's support for the first prince. She walks to her room and tries to take it easy, knowing that she has 3 years to become independent and leave before the female protagonist shows up. In this novel land, Ereshkigal, the goddess of the underworld, desired heaven and earth so much that she made the 7 sins that wrecked the continent. However, when the continent was on the point of ruin, Ereshkigal's younger sister and the goddess of heaven and earth, Ishtar, intervened, bestowing her power on 7 humans to help them in sealing the 7 sins. These humans eventually became heroes, and the 7 families were established, forming the foundation of the Wolantia Empire's legend. However, only 5 of the 7 families, including the royal family, remain today, including the Perdia family, which has been granted the power of destruction. Ooh, they have powers, okay. While making her way to her room in the annex, our girl unexpectedly meets her brothers, Yancy, the Duke's heir, and Carlotte, the second son. Yancy then approaches her with a worried expression, asking if she was punished for attempting to end her engagement. Despite the fact that this guy possesses the power extinction and is feared by many, Elodie is wary of him because of his very calculating personality, so she decides to look away rather than be fooled by his friendly face. It appears that Carlotte is the one who's the most predictable. He goes on in the hopes that Elodie would remain on probation and never come out, which annoys her, but she ultimately decides to just go. Ah, I see. I mistook them for the typically protective brothers. Oh well. Yancy and Carlotte have been able to use their abilities since they were little, but she has never done so because she's not a true Perdia. Despite being known as the Duke's illegitimate daughter from a previous relationship, the truth is that she doesn't have even the faintest trace of Perdia blood. However, her real parents did pass their powers on to her, and they are the Severix's purification abilities. In the novel, she'll be found using her purification power, which is hard proof that she is not a Perdia and would cost her life. To make matters worse, her real father, Duke Reinhard Severix, is now in a coma, leaving her with no one to turn to for support. so she really must avoid being identified. Okay, so even Duke Perdia is unaware that she is not his daughter? So how did she wind up living with them? Where's the mom? So many questions. Anyway, she intends to utilize her power to gain freedom, specifically by making a bargain with her stepmother, the Duchess of Perdia. She now stands outside the Duchess's garden, worried because the area is considered to be dangerous, when the Duchess herself, famous Perdia, the continent's best poisoner, appears to greet her. Stepmom is also very attractive, but her red hair gives me the impression that she is an awful lady. Strangely, her blue eyes give off an inviting vibe. We'll see. After a proper greeting, Elodie unexpectedly announces her desire to strike a bargain with the Duchess, much to her astonishment. In response, the Duchess invites Elodie inside her garden, cautioning her not to touch anything there since it is dangerous. Once inside, Elodie goes on to express her dismay that, despite the fact that the Duchess developed a good insecticide for farmers, the imperial family had her research gathered. The Duchess has no choice but to give it up. While it will be extremely useful, it is toxic when it enters the human body. The Duchess seems caring. Then, with a wide grin on her face, Elodie offers to help and proudly shows off her antidote she has created. Sweetie is just too cute. Of course, who would think that a mere youngster could create an antidote, right? So the Duchess gives off a creepy aura since she thinks Elodie is playing with her, but my daughter isn't scared of her. On the contrary, she smiles and suggests they try it out for themselves to see what happens. As a result, the Duchess shows Elodie her test subject, a recent pest known as Wormk, which appears small but transforms into a beast as it gets mana. After turning on the pesticide and killing the Wormk, the Duchess adds Elodie's antidote to it, which makes Elodie nervous. But as soon as she sees the Wormk move, she becomes overjoyed and clings to her stepmom. The Duchess's expression of shock compels Elodie to apologize for making the Duchess feel awkward. In response, the Duchess tells Elodie that she doesn't mind and is merely astounded by the sudden change of the once reserved child. Why does this Duchess feel like a good stepmommy to me? They then return to talk business, and because the antidote worked, the Duchess asks what she wants in exchange, which makes Elodie very happy, and she swiftly responds that she wants to sell the antidote under the Duchess's name. Elodie wants a cut of their profits, but Duchess Thamus doesn't see why she can't just use her own name. Elodie explains that no one would believe she developed an antidote, therefore she'd rather keep this a secret from the public, so she asks the Duchess to keep it a secret. Our girl anticipates the Duchess's question about how she developed the antidote, so she prepares an answer by giving an evil expression and claiming that her power has already manifested. And instead of saying it's a cure, she says it can destroy the poison. Perdia's power should be all about destruction, and my girl is sweating from her lies. In the story, Elodie attempts to poison the female lead, but ends up gulping it herself. But she does not die due to her purification power, exposing that she's not a Perdia. So it is better to tweak and reveal her abilities now. The Duchess offers her congratulations and remarks that they should celebrate rather than keep her powers hidden. But Elodie is smart enough to explain that she is aware of her status as an illegitimate child, and would want to keep it hidden so that no one would misunderstand her or think she possesses a danger to the Duchess's sons. The Duchess understands and agrees with Elodie. Elodie finally gets the rest after all the exhausting events. Elodie finally gets to rest after all of the exhausting events, but she fails to do so since the first prince has arrived to see her. She hurries to where he is, and just as she is about to sit down, she effortlessly mentions that she truly wants to end their engagement, claiming that she's fallen in love with someone else. As he stares at her, the prince senses something odd about her. He believes she wants to be a princess and even suspects she has feelings for him. However, he is now confused by her present behavior, which contradicts his expectations, causing him to believe that there must be an explanation for her sudden change. So he tells her that he can't cancel their engagement and urges her to stop if she's just trying to get his attention in that way, because it won't work. The prince continues to explain things to her, but she becomes dizzy, and he believes she's faking illness, which he considers pointless. However, Elodie collapses in front of him while he still believes she's acting, so he just orders her to stop and get up. But when she does not move, he hurriedly touches her, afraid to discover she has truly lost consciousness. The prince then calls for help, but no one answers, leading him to believe that, despite being an illegitimate daughter, she should have at least one servant at her side. He decides to carry Elodie out of the room, and along the way he meets her personal maid, who doesn't seem to care but still helps him get Elodie to her room. One maid and no other servants? Their treatment of her like this explains her previous bratish behavior. Now that Elodie is safely in bed, he notices a knife wound on her wrist, causing him to contemplate Elodie's circumstances. She lacks a reliable maid. A wrist wound, but looking at her now, he is relieved that she doesn't look like she's dying. He had previously assumed that she was trembling and sweating because she was nervous about meeting him, which caused him to miss the fact that she was in pain. He then takes Elodie's hand and blames himself for his arrogance, which keeps him from recognizing what is truly going on with our girl. The first prince does not seem like a horrible person at all. Elodie awakens with a pounding headache, assuming she passed out due to the lingering poison in her system from developing an antidote. If you're wondering what happened to her wrist, let me explain. To activate her power, she needs to directly consume the poison before applying her purifying power to ordinary water. If she doesn't have enough time, she can use her own blood as an antidote, but she accidentally scratches herself when she tries to puncture it softly. Now, seeing the fresh bandage on her arm leads her to believe that a doctor has come to see her. But this is confusing because doctors refuse to treat illegitimate children like her. How could anyone, including a doctor, treat her like this? Just then, Martha, her personal maid, enters her room, bringing her warm water and medicine. She also informs her that the prince left as soon as the doctor arrived, and he requests that she deliver his letter to her when she wakes up. Upon opening the letter, Elodie is surprised to find an invitation to the emperor's birthday party, along with the information that he will pick her up half an hour before the party starts. Elodie panics since she hasn't planned anything for the party, because she's expecting that the prince will not call off their engagement. But her personal maid assures her that she has already prepared everything and that she does not need to worry. However, it disturbs her that the prince is not canceling their engagement. But her maid believes that the prince has most likely fallen for her, causing our girl to almost giggle before grimly gazing at her maid to warn her not to make a joke again. However, Elodie finds solace in the fact that she still has plenty of time until Estelle's adoption, as well as more time to prepare for her independence, which involves staying low-key and saving money. A few days later, while walking down the corridor, she encounters Duke Perdia's advisor, Hector Arnold, the future traitor who, 3 years later, will reveal that she has no lineage from the Duke. As is well known, Elodie's plot to poison Estelle in the original novel backfires when the poison cup is swapped. Elodie's ability to withstand the poison is completely at odds with Perdia's destructive power. Thus, she cannot be the Duke's daughter. So in the end, she is abandoned and eventually gets left behind and killed. You can't judge a person's goodness by their appearance. After all, the man who is now casually greeting her with a smile is the one who exchanged the cups. She is now facing the man who will become a traitor to Duke Perdia and support the second prince. She suspects that the purpose of exchanging the poison cup was to sever the relationship between the first prince and the Perdia family. But one question remains. When would Arnold begin working and spying for the second prince? However, Elodie has no need to be scared of Arnold because first and foremost, she has no intention of ever poisoning Estelle. But she finds this thrilling and has already come up with a clever scheme to catch this traitor. She starts her act and confides in him, stating that she believes her father is very upset about her decision to cancel her engagement. And she reveals that the reason for her decision is that she's falling in love with the second prince, which surprises him, because the second prince is her father's political enemy. Elodie is confident that if Hector has any contact with the second prince, he will undoubtedly seek him out and provide all of the information she has disclosed, because, despite being an illegitimate child, Elodie is still Duke Perdia's daughter and can be a useful tool. As a result, Elodie continues her innocent act, seeking Hector Arnold's assistance in addressing her concerns with her father. He simply advises her to avoid any further problems, a suggestion she gladly accepts, although she wonders if he will fall for the trap. Despite being under disciplinary action, she is still obligated to attend official family events, including the Emperor's birthday celebration that day. She is taken aback by the sight of the first prince waiting for her outside. And although he doesn't look pleased at all, she still gives him a smile and politely greets him, which he courteously informs her that it is time to leave, and extends his hand to help her into the carriage. His unexpected actions take Elodie back, but she holds onto his hand as they depart. Not gonna lie, they look so good together when they enter the banquet hall, and while the first prince is engaged in conversation with some nobles, she sees this as a perfect chance to distance herself from him. She then chooses to step outside the banquet hall, and as expected, the second prince approaches her, confirming her suspicion that Hector, Duke Perdia's assistant, is in contact with him. Okay, there's no way this guy is the main lead, right? Meanwhile, the first prince, unable to focus on conversing with the nobles, decides to pursue Elodie and becomes confused upon seeing her with the second prince. Watching Elodie's joyful reactions as she chats with the second prince makes him wonder if the second prince is the one she claims to love. Surprisingly, for his average look, this Beltran guy is a popular womanizer, and it's not just that he doesn't care about his image as the second prince and enjoys drinking. In short, he's Beltrash. The first prince cannot let Elodie suffer at the hands of his brother, so he walks towards them to stop whatever they are doing when he notices Duke Perdia, who is also observing the two. Beltrash is currently asking Elodie to watch the opera with him, but when she declines, he basically keeps yapping, almost making her lose patience. Elodie is already clenching in rage, but he is so full of himself that he believes she's just shy around him, so he leans closer to her and asks her for a dance, which catches her off guard. He has the gall to put his filthy hands on our precious girl. Thankfully, this is Daddy's cue to interrupt them, and with a serious expression, asks Elodie to walk over to him, which she promptly does. After he holds her wrist, they depart from the prince and head to the terrace, where her father issues a warning about the second prince. He cautions her about meeting the guy in private because of his reputation for being overly touchy, which our girl will never do, so she assures her father not to worry. Wait, what now? She can't believe she thinks the Duke is worried about her, but still, she decides to stop second-guessing herself and chooses to ask the Duke outright if he is concerned about her. When the Duke takes a moment to answer, Elodie is sure her cold, distant father isn't worried, until Daddy responds, "Of course." She asks him again, and the Duke repeats himself, which confuses her even more. So she asks again, irritating Daddy. However, she decides not to be optimistic about it, since if the Duke discovers that she is not his biological daughter, he will undoubtedly kill her, prompting fear to take over her body. So she chooses to change the subject, and this time she is the one to warn her father, suggesting that he should keep an eye out for his assistant, Sir Arnold. She reveals this as insurance, because if they find out who the traitor is ahead of time, it certainly helps everyone in the future. And she also wants to pay back the Duke for raising her. Aw, she's too kind. Meanwhile, back in the banquet hall, the Perdia brothers attract a lot of attention from the ladies, but these two are unconcerned about it and are instead discussing the second prince and their sister. Carlotte assumed Elodie was flirting with the second prince, but Yancey spotted that it was Beltrash who clung to their sister. And just thinking about it makes Yancey lose control and disintegrate his wine glass and gloves. Oh, Big Bro looks kinda smexy. But they care about Elodie? After all of the commotion, Elodie decides to return home when the first prince approaches and invites her to a dance. She then attempts to decline, but the prince demands that she take his hand because he has something to tell her. As they dance, the prince discusses her request to end their engagement, explaining that it will be difficult because their engagement is very useful to him, which makes her so upset and makes her decide to purposely step on his foot while acting so innocent. Small revenge is still revenge. 2 days have gone by since the Emperor's birthday party, but she can't get the prince's comment out of her head. She remains frustrated by the prince's refusal to cancel their engagement, believing that it would be ideal for him to do so now, as he may eventually fall in love with Estelle and urge her to end their engagement. Just then, Martha rushes to her room and inquires if she's in trouble again, as the Duchess unexpectedly wants to meet her. When Elodie was a child, she would cry loudly whenever she was sick, and it was only the Duchess who took care of her. Elodie still vividly recalls the Duchess's cold and detached expression, as if she were looking at a lifeless object. Stepmommy is so pretty, and I think it's just her poker face that traumatized our girl. Elodie then realizes that, because of those memories, she is still fearful of the Duchess, even though she is the one who initially reaches out to her for financial gain. Elodie cannot find the Duchess, so she decides to explore the area, where she spots a beautiful flower that captivates her. She is ready to touch the flower when the Duchess warns her that if she extends her hand any further, her entire arm will be severed, forcing her to take a quick step back. Elodie then learns that Halicaria is a carnivorous flower that entices people with its vibrant beauty and seductive powder. See? Mommy cares! The Duchess then invites Elodie to take a seat and kindly offers her a refreshing iced tea, which she gratefully accepts and quickly quenches her thirst. The Duchess is surprised Elodie drank it all without leaving a drop, and she informs her that it is unusual to encounter someone who sips the tea she gives without fear but with total comfort. This confuses Elodie until she realizes that people must have been wary of the Duchess since she deals with poisons. Even so, because Elodie cannot just claim to have an antidote powder, she pretends to be thirsty due to the heat, and the Duchess teaches her that life is more important. Elodie comes up with a new excuse. She likes the aroma of the tea. However, when she finds out that it's actually odorless, she suddenly finds herself sweating bullets trying to come up with a better one. Look at that funny face of hers! Finally, she finds a solution and informs the Duchess that she trusted her because they are good partners. Elodie is confident that the Duchess values her abilities to create antidotes for her, and she believes that no one will poison their business partner. Her reasoning really surprises the Duchess, leading her to smile and agree with her. The Duchess then informs Elodie that her antidote has been approved for sale. Additionally, she mentions that they are currently distributing the remaining supplies and have even received advance payments, despite the limited quantity available. Elodie is pleasantly surprised by her share of the profits, while the Duchess willingly allows her to review the documents for a comprehensive financial report. The shining, shimmering eyes for money. Yes, girl! Following that, the Duchess expresses an interest in obtaining the antidote preparation process, but Elodie swiftly declines. The Duchess, thankfully, isn't the kind to forcefully demand her way, so she just asks Elodie about the prospect of developing an antidote for her other poisonous inflictions. Elodie says it's possible, but the more toxic the condition, the longer it takes to create an antidote. Why? The truth is that the pain is so intense that she is unwilling to bear it because, in order to create the antidote, she must consume the poison first. And despite her power to purify, she still feels the intense anguish of the poison. Elodie then asks the Duchess to maintain the secrecy of their deal, prompting the Duchess to reassure her that she will keep her promise, and that she should not be concerned because they are partners. This statement surprises Elodie, as she never expected to hear the Duchess describe her as someone closer to her, but she dismisses it as an unintentional remark, prompting her to smile and reply that they are truly wonderful partners. If they begin calling each other mommy and daughter, I will definitely burst into tears. On her way back to her room, Elodie stops when she hears a big commotion outside and sees Hector Arnold kneeling before the Duke of Perdia. Whoa, Daddy actually listened and took action so fast! Hector is now appealing for his life and attempting to persuade the Duke that he is innocent. But the Duke orders him to stop because he already has evidence proving he is in contact with the second prince. However, Hector Arnold insists that it's a conspiracy. The second prince must be trying to cause a conflict in Perdia, further aggravating the Duke. Elodie doesn't want to see people die since it makes her envision her future, so she hurriedly returns to her room, but the Duke calls out her name and orders her to follow him. However, Elodie becomes confused upon entering the Duke's bedroom, and he instructs her to take a seat while inquiring about her knowledge of Hector Arnold. She is prepared for this day, and she already has a mental speech in which she explains her first encounter with the man prior to the Emperor's birthday celebration, which resulted in a weird misunderstanding that she's in love with the second prince. His daughter just mentioned love, which enrages him, so Elodie repeatedly asserts that it was all a misunderstanding, which she did not bother to clarify with Sir Arnold. So when the second prince approached her at the party, she knew something was wrong, which is why she warned him to be cautious with Arnold. The Duke informs her that she has greatly contributed to the search for a traitor, so he wants to grant her one wish in return, making her secretly rejoice. So she requests for him to revoke her probation order. The Duke thinks for a while and grants her wish, but with one condition. Well, revoking probation means his daughter will undoubtedly go out. Therefore, his condition is that she choose Yancy or Carlotte as her escort. This is so shocking that Elodie tries to argue that she can merely bring a knight with her. But that is not one of Daddy's options because Beltrash may approach her, and no knights will be able to ward off the flirty prince. She is still hesitant, so the Duke proposes she pick both of her brothers, prompting her to say with a dorky, serious expression that she will select. As expected, our girl chose Carlotte as her escort, so she goes to the training area today to insist that he accompany her. But her brother yells that he would never escort her. She prefers no escort as well, so she turns around and goes away. But when she says she has to inform their father about it, Carlotte instantly grabs her hand and has no choice but to follow her. They're now going through town, and Elodie looks so adorable in her pink dress and umbrella, while Carlotte is still annoyed, but she doesn't mind because she'd rather deal with him than the calculating Yancy. The redhead then questions why she has no one, not even her maid, and gets confused when she explains that her maid is busy. She also smiles and adds that she doesn't need anyone when she already has him, since, while he may not be as strong as their older brother, Carlotte still possesses the destructive power known as landslide. Because it causes the ground to crumble, as the name suggests, and is an ideal for large-scale battles. Carlotte is a war veteran, and no great knight can match him in swordsmanship. Wow, his red hair and golden eyes, as well as that smile, are really charming. I only hope he stops fighting with our precious girl. Anyway, he has the strength, but unlike Yancey, his intelligence is kind of questionable. So she might as well put all that knowledge to good use. They are now outside the dress shop, but before entering, Elodie declares that she wants to eat the dessert from the famous Blanco Blanc, and asks that her brother buy it for her. Carlotte refuses since the pastry shop is so popular that you have to wait in line for hours, which our girl understands. But our innocent-looking cunning fox looks at her brother and asks if she can tell their father about this. Poor Carlotte is being played. Carlotte has spent 2 hours at the shop, and he's so embarrassed by the ladies who think he's adorable for buying sweet treats. However, when he returns to the dress shop, he is surprised to discover that Elodie has already left the shop 2 hours ago. She left him suffering in the dessert shop and really pieced out. Look at our girl finally enjoying her alone time. But she knows Carlotte must have noticed her disappearance by now, though she isn't bothered because that prideful boy will never tell the Duke that she sneaked away. Anyway, for her main goal for the day is to visit the Magic Tower, which she finds fascinating. But because she doesn't have much time, she walks straight to the counter and declares her desire to invest in one of the tower's businesses. The term investment delights the admin mage, who immediately uses his magic to put Elodie in a lavish chair and even makes tea for her. The power of capitalism! The mage then informs her that the most popular recent investment in the tower is the gold mine, which Elodie believes is a fine idea. But she has another plan in mind. She wants to invest in a mage named Irby. The admin mage attempts to encourage her to reconsider investing in Irby, but our girl is resolute because while Irby is currently an underperforming mage, she knows that he will be creating a magical tool in the future that would make him extremely popular and wealthy. Simply put, this investment is absolutely fail-proof, and she is glad that her thorough reading of the book has paid off. Oh, I better read novels thoroughly from now on, just in case Truck-kun gets me isekai'd. Elodie then receives a contract to sign, but she chooses not to use her real name because it will be traced, so she uses the name Lily Arthur. How can a name sound so powerful? Still, a good pick. She is now strolling back to the dress shop, relieved that she won't have to worry about money in the future. Although the money she makes from selling the antidote is sufficient, there is no assurance how long she'll be able to keep her secret from the Duchess, so this fresh investment is essential. I love how meticulous and prepared she is. Out of nowhere, a man grabs her hand as if he's been searching for her for a long time, leading Elodie to swiftly reclaim her hand, telling him he has the wrong person. She is confident that this is their first time meeting each other because she can't possibly forget a man with such dashing good looks. Oh my, checked for black hair and red eyes. Huh, the Duke from the North? Still unknown, but this guy smells like our male lead. The man is certain that she is the person he has been searching for, and when he addresses her by her former name, Yunga-ol, Elodie's world is instantly shook. Wait, this is getting interesting. Is this guy from the modern world as well? How did he recognize her? Elodie urgently wants to know his identity and how he knows that particular name. But before the man can respond, Elodie turns around as she hears Carlotte screaming her name from a distance. The charming gentleman then leans in, whispering in her ear that he will pay her a visit before vanishing into thin air. The plot is thickening. Elodie is so confused by what just happened, but her attention shifts to Carlotte when this guy eventually finds her and becomes furious, claiming that going around without an escort is extremely dangerous. One would be grateful that their brother is concerned about them, but not our girl, who removes Carlotte's hand from her shoulder, stating that he is completely out of his character, and that whatever happens to her does not worry him at all. And now, staring at his distressed and startled expression, Elodie finds it ridiculous because he was the one who wanted her to disappear more than anybody else. During their childhood, Carlotte heard the housekeepers discussing Elodie's illegitimate status, which led him to believe that his half-sister was the cause of his parents' strained relationship. Our Our sweet Elodie lives in the annex, but one day he went there and shoved her to the floor while calling her disgusting. Elodie, who is innocent, insists that she washes every day, which causes Carlotte to yell at her, accusing her of being dirty due to her illegitimate status, and blaming her for his parents' rocky relationship. She remained silent and listened helplessly as the young Carlotte exploded, wishing she would simply disappear from their lives. Because she knows from experience that Carlotte would never worry for her, she can only conclude that he is acting this way because of fear that their father will discover he's not a good babysitter. So she assures him that she will keep her mouth shut while he says nothing. She assumed that knowing she is in a novel would make the awful memories go away, but now she realizes that those emotions are already ingrained in her heart like traumas. But she doesn't care anymore because the strange guy who knows her past is more important right now. Carlotte is just a rude brat, but I can see that he cares. Their brother-sister duo is adorable, so I hope they can work things out. After they got back home, Elodie can't stop thinking about the dashing guy from before. She attributes his aura of elegance to his aristocratic status, so she figures he must be one. She then asks Martha if she knows any noble young men with black hair and red eyes in the Empire, prompting her maid to ask the most important question. Is the gentleman handsome? However, as soon as Elodie confirms that the guy is very attractive, Martha confidently declares that there is no one, leading Elodie to assume that the handsome, mysterious guy is not a noble. Her musings are interrupted when she notices a letter with the imperial family seal on her table, and when she learns that it's from her fiancé, she gloomily requests that Martha get her a pen and paper. She doesn't seem interested in the letter. Meanwhile, Yancey appears to have planted a spy around Elodie when she left, who now informs him that Elodie visited the magic tower. Big Bro is curious as to why she visited the tower, but what draws his interest the most is that Elodie met with a guy he knows she never had contact with. Wow, he already has information about our mysterious boy! Whatever the case may be, Yancey can see that his little sister, whom he calls Lily, has changed considerably. For instance, she no longer avoids their mother and instead frequently has tea with her, while their father, who treats her poorly, has even assigned Carlotte the task of being her escort, which is really confusing him. Is Yancey the type of brother who's overly obsessive? Hope not. After repeatedly turning down the first prince's invitation, Elodie is becoming increasingly irritated by the fact that she has received yet another letter from him today. She is astonished and enraged as soon as she finishes reading the recent letter. Look who's chasing who now! The letter actually claims that the first prince has decided to pay her a visit, and our girl has no choice but to join him for tea. He explains that because her return letters constantly say that she's not feeling well, he decides to check on her, prompting Elodie to fake a smile and pretend that she has already improved significantly as a result of his presence. But in reality, Elodie is so frustrated that the guy is actually here that she resolves to think of only happy thoughts, such as how attractive he is. Anyway, because she confirms that she is feeling fine, the first prince expects to see her for dinner, which surprises her. So he explains that he has been invited by the Duke, who has organized a family feast. Dinner with the entire family, plus the prince, is too much interaction for our girl, causing her to start panicking. It seems like Elodie isn't the only one who has changed. The others around her are too. Everyone has arrived at the dining table, and Elodie is unable to enjoy her food. She even fears that her pretended sickness will come true at any time. She decides to only listen when the Duke mentions the Angelus family, who have begun their military supply project, which Yancey confirms, as well as the fact that the family has purchased nearly all of the magic stone mines required for creating magic armor. From what Elodie can recall, the Angelus dukedom belongs to the great families as well, and they have the power of regeneration. Duke Rodrigo Angelus, the family's head, is obsessed with honor and riches, which motivates him to crush all the families in order to ensure that Angelus becomes the best. But there is one person who is preventing him from accomplishing his goals, and that is none other than her father, Duke Sylvester Perdia. Back to the discussion, the Duke stresses that if Angelus continues to monopolize monastones, they will undoubtedly face material shortages, prompting the Duchess to propose that they too should purchase magic stone mines. Because Angelus has taken control of almost all of the mines, the first prince opposes the Duchess because he believes it's too late, while our girl appears uninterested because she already knows that the Perdia family will triumph over Angelus in the end. It will be a tough start, but Yancey will figure out a solution in the end. So she just eats there relaxedly while the Duke notices, leading him to be curious about her thoughts on the matter. This is shocking, but she figures getting the Duke's favor isn't a bad idea. So she subconsciously apologizes to Yancey as she plans to steal and reveal his future solution. She then goes on to explain that because Angelus took over all the Empire's mines, they could do the same, but not the mines, of course, because who says that magic stones are only materials required for producing military supplies? She then beams brightly and proposes that they buy all the other components and sell them to Angelus at a high price, which amazes everyone at the table, while Father simply sips his wine as if he expected her to be so smart. Stepmommy compliments her, and Elodie feels awkward when she thanks her. Yet she can't help but wonder what they think of her now, as she's having trouble keeping a straight face since she finds the life of a smarty so exciting. Well, to be fair, they asked and she just answered. Angelus becomes increasingly concerned after learning that Perdia has obtained possession of other materials, putting him in a position where he believes Perdia will undoubtedly charge a greater price for them, which poses an obvious disadvantage. He then concludes that Yancey Perdia must have come up with the trick, but his assistant informs him that, based on their spy's information, it is actually Elodie Perdia, the youngest daughter of Duke Perdia, which surprises him since the girl is just an illegitimate daughter who cannot use her powers. Villain alert! Today, Elodie is reading the newspaper, which states that the Angelus family is leaving the military supply business and that their magical stone mine is for sale, but no one buys it, leading her to believe that they must be furious right now. Her attention then shifts to the poison bottles in front of her, where she notices something unusual, prompting her to question whether she has counted them incorrectly. At this point, someone knocks on her door and a servant informs her that the Duke has invited her to discuss Angelus family concerns, preventing her from preparing the antidote that day. Inside the Duke's office, Elodie feels a surge of anxiety as she realizes she's alone with him, but she musters the bravery to ask him why he's called for her. The Duke smiles briefly before telling Elodie that he wants to reward her and expresses his gratitude for helping him twice already, which leaves her wondering why he is suddenly acting differently, calling her out on things he usually doesn't, and even appointing one of his sons as her escort. This is completely uncharacteristic of the Duke. She knows he despises seeing her, which is why he sends her to the annex far from their presence. Elodie, curious about the Duke's motives, asks why he seeks her opinion now when he has no interest in her, which seems to have shocked the Duke. However, upon hearing that he believes she can solve the problem now, Elodie begins to wonder if he's comparing her to her old evil self. The Duke looks shy as he confesses that he's been watching her, but given his scary character, he decides not to approach for fear of making her cry. Gosh, so you only observed when she endured bullying from her brothers, isolated in the annex, and mistreated by the servants and doctors? However, his words moved Elodie, but she chooses not to let them affect her because the Duke will kill her the moment he finds out that she isn't related to him. Yet when the Duke asks what she wants, she asks him to praise her because, even if it's just today, she wants to feel loved. The Duke remains silent for a moment before reaching out to softly pat her head, expressing his appreciation for her excellent work. Poor girl, she needed to use her reward just to feel loved. Elodie is making her way to her room when she unexpectedly runs into Carlotte. Concerned, Carlotte inquires about the reason behind Elodie's tears and expresses worry over the possibility of their father's disciplinary actions. This enrages Elodie, prompting her to remind him that it has nothing to do with him and that he doesn't need to be concerned about her. She also requests that he ignore her, which he always does. However, Carlotte becomes irritated, explaining that he is concerned that if someone watches her walk in such a manner, it will be a shame for their family. Yet he cautions her to remain in her room that night. She almost forgets the night of the moon eclipse, which was when Yancey lost his sanity. Every 3 years, when the eclipse covers the entire continent in darkness, the power of the underworld goddess increases, causing the great families to lose control of their own power. Well, it does vary depending on the characteristics that the families possess. For example, Elodie, who possesses the power of purification, is unaffected by the eclipse. On the other hand, as you may have guessed, the situation is very different for the Perdias, who possess the power of destruction. Their mansion was destroyed 3 years ago by Carlotte, who went berserk. But based on what she read, this year Carlotte will be able to manage his powers, but not Yancey, whom she's currently visiting in the garden. Yancey may appear to have complete control over his power, but the truth is that he is unable to control it properly. And with the passing eclipse, he has to go into hiding and endure the suffering in the garden. In fact, Elodie has a terrible memory of Yancey from their childhood, particularly from 6 years ago when Elodie was out for a stroll during the lunar eclipse and spotted Yancey in the garden kneeling and in agony. Young Elodie was terrified at the time, and when Yancey screamed at her, she panicked, and all she could do was run away, but not tonight. In the novel, the female lead will be the one who comforts her big brother, bringing the two closer together, and our clever lady intends to play that part to avoid any unneeded disturbance in their mansion, as well as to gain his trust. Sitting down next to Yancey, she reassures him that the pain will eventually go away with a pat on the back. Yancey finds comfort in this and puts his head on her shoulder. Is her purifying power helping him? After some time, Yancey raises his head, but to Elodie's surprise, it appears that her brother is unable to recall what has just happened. Her efforts to get closer to him over the night have been pointless, leaving her with not much choice but to just state that she discovered him unconscious while she cries on the inside. It can't be helped if that comfort thingy only works for the female protagonist. So when Yancey says he feels better now, Elodie decides to leave him alone and return inside. Yancey observes her as she walks away, realizing Elodie was the little girl who ran away before. Oh, he doesn't even remember yelling at the precious baby before, huh? The Perdia family made it through the lunar eclipse without incident, but everything changes for our girl here since Yancey has changed and is now following her, constantly calling her Lily and asking if she is sick anywhere. She is relieved that her assistance last night was effective, but now she's wondering if Yancey truly cannot recall what happened last night, which makes her anxious about what is on his mind. Elodie finds this increasingly unsettling, but she knows she can't confront him directly, so she suggests that he should get going, pointing out that he has work to do. This prompts Yancey to request one favor before leaving, to hold her hand, which worries Elodie that her brother may be planning to break it. However, before she can react, he swiftly holds her hand, experiencing a calming sensation that confirms his suspicion, only to have their conversation cut short when Carlotte arrives. So I was correct! Elodie unintentionally unleashed her powers on him last night. Wait, does that imply that he knows that they're not really related? Gosh, I have to admit, Yancey's observant nature is really dangerous. Regardless, Elodie frees her hand from Yancey's grasp and inquires about Carlotte's intentions, leading Carlotte to inform her that the Duchess instructed him to call her. However, Carlotte gets baffled when, instead of just thanking him, Elodie asks him why the Duchess sent him of all people, prompting him to explain that he just happened to meet the Duchess and was told to. Our girl couldn't help but find this hilarious because if anybody saw them, they would think she has a wonderful relationship with her brothers. But hearing his explanation and seeing his attitude right now assures her that Carlotte is simply forced to see her. She then walks by her brothers and coldly tells them that if they need anything, they should simply ask the servants to send it along rather than seeing her in the annex. She has totally closed her heart to them, and I still can't get over the fact that she lives in the annex, which just adds to why she's distant. When Elodie arrives at the Duchess's garden, her stepmommy smilingly greets her, but she shrugs it off and assumes she's been summoned to discuss the antidote. However, she becomes puzzled when stepmommy says that she doesn't have to rush, considering that there's no reason to summon her now unless they're discussing the antidote. Sweetie, I hope that you'll notice that mommy is trying to reach out to you. Speaking of antidotes, Elodie is unsure, so she asks the Duchess if she has only entrusted her with making 11 antidotes. When the Duchess responds that it is actually 12, Elodie panics and quickly looks down, explaining that she has lost one of the poisons. She feels anxious and apologizes for her carelessness, but stepmommy remains calm and reassuring. She tells her not to worry, since if the thief didn't know it was poison, they would die. And whether they try to sell it on the black market or not, it doesn't matter to her. Oh, look at mommy's sweet face! Elodie finally calms down, never expecting that she will not get scolded, until the Duchess comments that she knows Carlotte and Yancey have been bugging her lately, prompting her to spit her tea. She immediately reassures the Duchess that she does not need to be concerned since she will avoid her sons. And before the Duchess can say anything else, Elodie excuses herself and flees. The Duchess can only rest her head on her palm and sigh as she watches Elodie run away, deciding that it is probably best to just observe for now. Stepmom was probably trying to strike up a conversation, but our girl mistook it for a threat. For those curious, the first prince was actually the one who took the poison. He then finds out that it's a poison that Duchess Perdia made herself. He's sure the Duchess has no intention of harming Elodie with it because it would be such a clumsy move. His mind races with possibilities until he connects Elodie's wrist injury to the poison, and he realizes our girl is trying to end her own life. he is sneaky and a different kind of Delulu. Today, Elodie and Carlotte are in the carriage as she wishes to go out again, and as usual, Carlotte complains about missing his training to accompany her. She merely smiles and says she wouldn't mind asking Yancey the next time she goes out, but she reminds him that she will have to report it to their father, forcing her simple-minded brother to tone it down. But all of a sudden, their carriage suddenly rattles and stops, causing Elodie to bump herself, while Carlotte becomes serious and unsheaths his sword as he goes out, instructing Elodie to remain inside. She attempts to stop him, but the only thing she can do is duck her head and cover her ears in fear of what the outside noise could be. After some time, she stops hearing any sounds outside and begins to worry about Carlotte, who has not returned to the carriage, so she decides to open the door. However, what she finds outside is not what she expected. Carlotte Perdia is on his knees and his abdomen is clearly bleeding. He is supposed to be powerful. What is going on here? Suddenly, one assassin gets closer behind Carlotte, which Elodie detects and immediately throws a vial of something deadly at him, causing him to let out a scream. Sorry, it's not fatal, but the smoke it produces is addictive, so she seizes the opportunity to rush her brother to the carriage while questioning his abilities. Carlotte, our prideful guy here, nevertheless manages to explain that the assassins have a magical tool that can disable his power, putting him at a disadvantage. Since the carriage driver has already died, RIP, Mr. NPC. Elodie takes one horse and instructs Carlotte to get on it as quickly as possible. But his ego will not let him, so he demands she leave alone. Goodness gracious, our girl has no time for this, so she annoyingly reminds him that if he dies, she will undoubtedly die as well, so he should stop the act and just follow her instructions. Carlotte eventually gets aboard, and Elodie swiftly giddies up the horse. But despite her efforts to speed up, the assassins manage to keep following them. The chase comes to a stop when they reach the cliff, and she starts feeling scared that she will die today. But Carlotte, despite his serious injuries, gets off the horse and continues to make efforts to protect her from the enemy. However, he misses one of the assassin's attacks and is only able to yell in an attempt to warn Elodie to avoid the flying dagger that's heading in her direction, which ultimately causes her to fall off the cliff. Our redhead sprints and swiftly reaches out to catch her, but in an instant, a rush of painful memories of young Carlotte's disgusted look when he told her not to touch him floods her mind, causing her to instinctively retract her hand while looking so scared. That deep-rooted trauma. Carlotte is at a loss for what to do and is dumbfounded that Elodie would choose to fall rather than accept his help, which makes him nearly tear up as he wonders how much she hates him. Howdy, Mr. Detective. Why not think of what you have done to your sister throughout the years? Meanwhile, our girl closes her eyes, unable to believe that after everything she has gone through, this is how she dies. However, she gets confused when she senses someone is holding her, so she opens her eyes to see the eye candy, innocent-looking, mysterious guy again. Carlotte has returned to their mansion and is now on his knees, accepting full responsibility for the accident, whereas the Duke is fuming but making efforts to remain calm. He instructs his knights to find Elodie with a gaze that screams, "You better find her or you'll lose your heads," before he orders Carlotte to receive treatment. Carlotte insists on helping, causing Yancey to become irritated at him for failing to complete his task properly. But Mommy intervenes before the situation escalates and just urges Carlotte to seek treatment. They're supposed to be villains, yet they seem like a genuine loving family to me. Let's return to our girl. It's already evening when she wakes up in a cabin and she begins to feel pain throughout her body. Her thoughts then turn to the strange guy who saved her, prompting her to question why he is doing her such an act of kindness. In any event, even if she's still wobbly, she walks to the door, intending to go home. But suddenly the door opens, startling both Elodie and this sweet-looking savior from the above gentleman. After exchanging long looks, he finally bursts the bubble and asks if he may help with her injuries. Oddly, she goes along with his request as she somehow finds him reliable, even though she has no idea who he is. While the guy is tending to Elodie's wounds, she begins to inquire about his identity and discovers that he is neither a mage nor a member of any of the Empire's great families. She can see this guy isn't lying, but as a novel reader, she can't believe he's not an important character given how attractive he is. Exactly my thoughts! She then asks for his name, which he readily gives her, Rayan. After that, she finally questions what everyone is so curious about. Why did he call her Yungaul before? Rayan pauses, but nonetheless admits that he had a recurring dream about a completely different world with a lot of light, and that she appeared in it. For a second there, I believed he was also from the modern world. Still, I'm certain now that he is our protagonist. He's not sure why, but the moment he saw her, he recognized her as Yoon-ga-oh, which our girl here believes is a lie. Oh, there is still a chance he comes from her world. She also tries to recall the novel, but no character named Ryan comes to her mind, so she concludes that this man must have given her a fake name. However, based on his gentle demeanor, she believes Ryan's intentions are not to hurt her, so she decides to leave things be for the time being and simply inquires as to where they are. Ryan states that the cabin is actually his home, and that he witnessed a huge search team that appears to be from Perdia, which confuses Elodie because she assumed that the Perdia family would be relieved that she's gone now. Anyway, she has no plans of escaping yet, so she requests that Ryan help her go home. Back at the Perdia mansion, the Duke receives a report from Geryon, the family's dashing knight commander, that according to their investigation, the attackers have no known background, but it looks that Elodie was their main target. Yancey oozes an evil aura as he instructs Geryon to track down whoever the mastermind is, which Daddy seems to agree with given how enraged he appears right now. But the Duke remains composed and states that they must prioritize the search for Elodie. However, the heated dispute is cut short as a servant hurries in to notify them that Elodie has returned. Our girl is now in her room with bandages all over her body after receiving proper medical attention. But what puzzles and makes her uncomfortable is that the entire family has assembled in her room. It will take time until she lets them in, but I'm glad they're making an effort now. Mommy may appear cold, but I know she's concerned when she asks Elodie if she's in pain anywhere else, and even invites her to come to her if she ever needs help, prompting Elodie to inform her worriedly that she used the potion she gave her by mistake during the attack. Actually, the Duchess gave it to Elodie in the event of an emergency, so she is pleased to give her more, which Elodie accepts. After that, they figure she has to get some rest, so they depart. By the way, this is the first time we've ever seen the Duke and Duchess in the same frame, guys. And they look so dazzling together. Such a power couple. Everyone has finally left the room, except for Carlotte, who stands there quietly. Elodie decides to use her annoyed tone with him, stating that she's exhausted and that he should say what he wants to say quickly, prompting Carlotte to question why she didn't grab his hand on the cliff. She responds to Carlotte's direct question about whether she wants to die by asking if he finds it disappointing that she's still alive, which he quickly denies. Elodie massages her head, unable to argue with him, but stunned when Carlotte envelops her in a bear hug, confessing that he was worried. Carlotte kneels beside Elodie, leaving her speechless as he begs for her forgiveness for everything he has done, including calling her an illegitimate child. After remembering that he could be acting this way because she withdrew her hand, she chooses to be frank and admits that she did it in response to his warning that she's filthy and should not touch him, a revelation that horrifies Carlotte. He swiftly hugs her again and continually says that she isn't dirty at all, promising to be her escort for the rest of his life like a dog, which should feel amazing, but our girl is very baffled by his rapid change. I can already picture this guy being very protective of her. So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories, so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the next one!